The Survivors is brought to you by our friends at Schoser Talent and Wellness Solutions. This podcast mentions suicide, mental illness, grief, and loss, and may be triggering for some listeners. So please take care of your mental well-being by pausing or skipping any sections that feel uncomfortable to you. And if you or someone you know is struggling, please call 988 for support.
Hey, how are you?
Fine. How are you?
I'm great. I didn't know if you noticed this, but this is my month of the music graphic t-shirt. You can't see this at all if you're listening to the audio, but I'm in a Queen t-shirt. And I think last week I was in a Beatles t-shirt, and next week I think I'm going to be in a Fleetwood Mac t-shirt. So I just want it to be acknowledged that this is my graphic t-shirt era.
Excellent. Sounds lovely.
You're looking at me like, what are we talking about? Okay. What we're really talking about this week on The Survivors is something we actually have not really touched on at all. And I know I'm excited to dig into this conversation. We're talking about the role of social media in suicide prevention, which I think is a very, very powerful conversation. And I'm glad that we're having it, that we're finally having it. Because let's be honest, social media is a mixed bag. Some days it's definitely the thing that keeps us connected, maybe keeps us inspired, keeps us hopeful, all those things. I'm not trashing the goodness that is out there in social media. Other days it is a shit show. Other days it drags us down. It demoralizes us. It forces us to compare ourselves and our lives against everybody else who seems like they're doing it a lot better than we are. So today, I thought it might be a good idea if you and I just unpacked the role that social media plays in suicide prevention, because it can really help and it can really harm. And what we can do to make our feeds healthier and safer and more supportive is up to us. Like, we get to decide where we focus our attention. You agree?
Agree. And there's two sides to the social media thing too. Is it's one thing to post a lot about mental health and things like that, but like when we're posting, we also need to remember that people get compassion fatigue, and so you have to be very cognizant of what you are posting. And you know what? If you're gonna post something out there just to be mean, don't post it. It's kind of like going back to what your mom used to say. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, because people can read into that and they could be having a really horrible day, and all you're doing is making that day worse for them.
I'm really glad that you said all that, because it just brought two things to mind, and I want to see if I can remember both of them, because my short-term memory's been terrible lately. So the first thing I think is that it's very important that we recognize that there are people out there who feel this false sense of empowerment behind a screen. I know those people. I have worked with those people, collaborated with those people, been friends with those people, who are two totally different kinds of people when they are in person in front of your face, or maybe on the phone with you, versus the same person texting you something or writing an email, which who does that anymore? But or or someone who posts something. They're like a Jekyll and Hyde. And I have had a couple of experiences in my life where I've been close to someone who I felt like I really knew and trusted and believed was one type of person. And then all of a sudden, I saw them to be someone completely different, and in some cases, passive aggressive and hostile and unkind, just unkind. And that can really do a number on you. Can be really, really hard when you're on the receiving end of that. And it's this false sense of empowerment that I think a lot of people feel.
Yeah, it is. And the way that you post out onto social media, be cognizant of what you're posting. Are you posting it to be funny? Are you posting it to be hurtful? Be aware of who your audience is going to be when you're posting it. And because it may just strike a really bad chord with somebody, and that may not have been your intention.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that just speaks to the fact that people just have to be conscious of what they're doing and understand that there are actually human beings on the other side of these screens that we look at or that we hold in our hands. And I don't think that enough people keep that in mind because we're doing everything with these inanimate objects that don't respond back to us in a lot of cases. We're just putting our feelings out there, and oftentimes we're doing it without a filter. So it's this double-edged sword.
And it goes back to what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, in like negative self-talk. That's like we say stuff online that we would never, ever, ever, I mean, ever say to somebody in person.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about. I know I would never expect certain things from certain people in person, and then all of a sudden I get something from that person over text, and I'm like, "Who the hell are you?" all of a sudden.
Yeah. And social media is the same way. So whether you're posting a meme or a statement or something, words matter and words can hurt. And really think long and hard if that's something that you want to attach your name to. But also for somebody who use social media to try and feel better, yeah, there's a lot of good people you can follow on Instagram. Okay, yes, I went down the TikTok rabbit hole. Didn't do that for a whole long time, but find people that you trust and their messages make your heart feel good instead of going out to like your normal friends and family feed. There are people out there with really good intentions that are just trying to help.
Yeah, it's true, and we should be mimicking our real life in what we do on social media. Like, I don't connect with people just for numbers. If I don't have a relationship with you, if I don't have some kind of common connection with you or some reason to be connected with you, I'm not going to connect with you. I'm not just looking to boost numbers and followers and that sort of thing. That's of no interest to me whatsoever. And if I'm not going to be close to you in real life, I'm not going to be close to you in an artificial world. And and I think that we have to subscribe to the same school of thought that Dave and I always used to teach the girls. Find the people who are going to make you feel good about yourself, support you, fill you up, bring out the best in you. Well, when you and I are talking in the context of social media and how that can help and how that can hurt, when we're seeking people out, we have to do the same thing with the sites that we spend our time on and the influencers who we listen to, because they can be really corrupting and they can be really toxic. I mean, look, it's like I said a minute ago, social media is definitely a double-edged sword. It can be a lifeline for people who feel isolated. And I think that that has revolutionized loneliness in a lot of ways, but it's also given us an isolation and loneliness epidemic at the same time, which is weird, but it's true. It connects people who don't have the means to be connected to supportive communities and peer groups and virtual groups and even real-time crisis support. But these same platforms or ones like them can also expose people to cyberbullying and misinformation and fraud, and there can be lots of content triggers. So, it's a tool, but it's also a risk.
It is, but with some of that risk, there is reward. For me, just my own personal story is right before everything happened on that Christmas day, I was trying to find every kind of resource that could just make me feel a teeny tiny bit better. And like I did, I found some influencers out there that did make me feel better. And I did start to realize that I wasn't alone in my own like internal battle of what was going on in my head, but I was still depressed. And it's not a cure all. Uh, that's where therapy came in. That's where like opening up came in. You can't just depend on that social media aspect to be your therapist because you still need to open up your mouth and talk about it.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned don't trust it to be a therapist, because there is a very, very hot conversations happening right now. There's been a lot going on in the news. I think it's important that we bring it here to this conversation, even if we only just touch on it. And that is the controversy about utilizing AI now for therapy. Because as we all know, and if you don't know, you'll know soon enough, AI, artificial intelligence, is not always reliable. And there have been a lot of cases, far too many cases recently in the news where, and I'm talking more specifically about younger people, like youth, who have taken their lives because they have been led on by some artificial intelligence in ways that a traditional face-to-face, in-person therapist would never allow. And people's lives have been compromised because they are seeking out professional mental health therapy using a chatbot. And someone who doesn't know them, someone who is artificial. And in some cases, it has created chaos because a lot of kids have done bad things to themselves, or in some cases ended their lives. And so in that way, it's a very, very dangerous tool. Social media is a very dangerous tool in that way. And you really have to know what you're saying and what you're doing to really ensure that you're staying safe.
Definitely. And while AI is still there, like don't depend on that answer. Don't. It's like going to school and using the Encyclopedia Britannica. Check your resources. Check in with a helpline. Check in with friends. Look to make sure that that is the answer that you're looking for. I will tell you, doing the Google search on mental health or suicide awareness, you get a ton of information that is not helpful. But do your research and like follow people that make your heart feel good because that's what I did. It made my heart feel better. Maybe not my head feel better, but it made my heart feel better knowing that I wasn't going through my own horrible journey by myself.
Yeah, it's important as a form of connection. It can be an incredible tool. I moderate, and I've talked about it many times on the podcast. I moderate a group for survivors of suicide loss. I facilitate this group through Samaritans here in Boston called Safe Place, and it gives people a virtual opportunity to gather in a group with other people who have experienced a very specific kind of loss. And I know that there are thousands and thousands of these types of groups for people who are survivors of loss, who are dealing with generalized grief, who have dealt with attempts on their own life, who are dealing with depression, anxiety, substance abuse, eating disorders, you name it. There is really a group for anyone, and you can find it virtually in so many cases. And that's, again, that falls in the wow, social media can be such a powerful tool category. But then you go to the other side. We haven't even scratched at the whole comparison culture idea yet. So let's just scratch that right now.
Scratch that itch.
Yep. So there is this concept, and I'm a parent. I have two daughters who are now grown adult women living their lives out in the workforce, but they were right there in the epicenter of the birth of TikTok and Instagram and stories and everybody's bat mitzvah being plastered all over Facebook and social media. And, oh, how come I didn't get the invitation to that one? And, oh, how come that one did that better? And how come that one did their bigger? And oh my God, comparison culture as the mother of two daughters who were living in that generation with social media just emerging. Oh my God. That was a time, I can tell you. I almost wish Dave was here for this conversation because he would say the same thing. Like, that was a brutal time because there's just this constant inundation and exposure to incredibly curated, and I want to focus on the word curated because that's what it is, curated, manipulated, highlight reel content. And it is the tiniest little percentage of what someone's actual real life is like, and yet everybody thinks it's your whole life. And for somebody who's struggling with mental illness, like, oh, I don't know, a teen whose brain isn't developed yet, who's in like middle school, which is the worst time of life, and they're already struggling, seeing endless images of perfect lives with all the kids all around you who are in school sitting next to you all day can just deepen your feelings of inadequacy or shame or despair or hopelessness or whatever you're feeling. And this is just as true for teens and adults.
What if your business could recruit smarter, onboard faster, and support employee wellness all at once? Welcome to Schoser Talent and Wellness Solutions, where people-first strategy meets real results. With over 45 years of combined experience and 16 years specializing in UKG Recruiting and Onboarding systems, we help small and mid-sized businesses thrive. From the first application to full integration, we streamline your hiring process, reduce time to hire, and deliver seamless onboarding experiences. Our proprietary tools like the Recruiting and Onboarding Health Check and the Employee Mental Wellness Index turn insight into impact. At Schoser, we know that businesses are built on people. That's why we integrate wellness into every solution, promoting mental health, reducing burnout, and creating a culture where talent stays and thrives. Whether you're navigating change, implementing tech, or engaging your team, we tailor every solution to fit your goals. Visit schosersolutions.com today. Let's build a healthier, more productive future, one workplace at a time.
It is. It's like trying to keep up with the Joneses. Right?
Yes.
Like, don't. Like, live your own life. You live your own unique, beautiful life. You don't have to be a Kim Kardashian. Just be a good person. Making sure that you're taking care of you and the people around you, but take care of you first, because you can't take care of anybody else unless you're taking care of you first.
Well, I think a big part of doing that, especially in the online culture that we are living in, where social media is literally everywhere. Like the one thing in the world that nobody is leaving behind is their phone. And if you're on your phone, you're on social media and you're on the platforms and you're being inundated 24 hours a day by all the news and all the feeds and all the influencers. So ways to protect yourself are remembering. One of the biggest ways is just to remember that you reserve the right to curate your own space. You have more control than you realize. We all have way more control. Parents have more control over their kids because they can use filters and controls and things like that that really didn't exist when my kids were young, but they do now. So you can kind of help to protect your kids. But if we're talking about grown adults, we can pick and choose what we spend our time listening to and watching. And I'll tell you, there is a lot of power in muting or unfollowing or blocking content that's harmful or that doesn't serve you and just replacing it with, I know you and I know how much you love your little penguins dancing videos and kitty cats and flying
Raccoons.
squirrels and raccoons and all those things. Yeah, but they make you happy. Like, my family thinks that I'm ridiculous because I'll be sitting there on the couch with everybody and I'll take 2 seconds and I'll watch a funny video and I have to have everybody see the funny compilation of cats sliding all over the floor. But it makes me so unbelievably happy. So I watch that. And that's a good part of social media because it makes me happy.
Yeah, like with me, I start my day with 20 minutes of funny videos. Right now, it's raccoon videos, but it makes me feel better. And it's content. I look for content that will make me feel better. And I'm all about blocking, snoozing. If it doesn't fit me at that point in time in my life, you're going to get snoozed. And I don't feel bad about it anymore. I used to feel bad about it, but I don't because now I'm protecting my mental health, which to me is the most important thing.
Oh, agreed. 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 And it's funny, in terms of boundaries, you and I have talked both online and offline a lot about boundaries and how each of us has kind of reset our boundaries in different ways. And I know myself personally, if my therapist were here right now, she would probably agree, and so would my family, that the most work that I've done on myself in the past couple of years has to do with creating and maintaining boundaries for myself. And an extension of that has recently become what you just talked about, which is to snooze or unfollow or unfriend people who I either am no longer close to, or maybe in the world that we live in right now that is so politically divided, I just don't want to be forced to see and hear and watch and listen to and read content that upsets me or doesn't align with my personal values. Like, look, anybody on any side of the aisle reserves the right to say what they feel they need to say and post what they are going to post. But I, on my side of the aisle, whatever side that may be, reserve the right to not have to listen to you and not have to consider what you have to say because I find it to be offensive or hurtful or whatever the case may be. And so I have done, my kids are shocked that I've actually unfollowed a lot of people. And I have never done that before. And I will not apologize for that because if I'm not a fan of what you believe in, I am choosing to react to that in the way of, okay, well, I'm just I'm not going to be close to you. Like we don't align anymore. So I'm not going to be close to you because what you say and do really hurts me deeply. So you can go ahead and say and do it, but you're going to do it without me. So, and I'm making a reflection of that now, my virtual life too. Like it's carrying over into my virtual life. And I got to tell you, it's super liberating.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate act of self-love right
Yes.
there. It
Yes.
is the ultimate act.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, part of the whole social media thing too is get off your phone. Go enjoy a little bit of nature. I'm going to tell you, the phone will still be there, but like in my case, my days of being able to go outside and enjoy the weather are numbered because snow is coming.
I know. Look, I love the fact that you're talking about snow and it's barely fall and you're already fixating on it.
I am. You want to know why? Because I'm trying to get as much time outside without having to put on 17 layers of clothes
Okay, I respect that.
and enjoy some fresh air.
No, I agree, and I love that for you, and I completely support what you're saying because look, it's you can't argue all of the studies that have been done that link heavy social media use, and I'm not just talking about with kids, I'm talking about with humans. It links social media use, screen time to increased anxiety, increased depression, heightened emotional reactions to things, sleeplessness. There are so many different ways that screen time has an impact on us. So when we're creating boundaries, not just within the spaces that we are in on social media, but when we're also creating other boundaries, like limiting our screen time altogether and maybe having like a no phone zone. I know we did that when our kids were young and social media was really emerging. We would say to them, you will not take your phone out at a restaurant. You will not take your phone out at the dinner table unless it's like an emergency and someone's literally on fire. And we really stuck to that. But people don't do that as much anymore. People aren't doing the digital detoxes like they were a while ago, years ago, because everything got turned upside down during the pandemic and nobody's come out of it yet, I think, in that way. People are still glued to their devices.
You know what I did find, though, is after January 20th, I started putting my phone down more because I don't need to hear the rhetoric. I don't need that in my life, and that's just not only social media, but that's just also news sources and everything. Yeah, there's some important stuff going on in the world today, but you don't need to be looking at it 24/7.
It's true. It's very true. And I've also been very, very intentional about where I get my news and, more importantly, how I get my news. I try now to get my news more one-dimensionally and read my news rather than listening to it, because it sets off a whole bunch of visceral chain reactions. And I feel all of that when I'm watching certain things or listening to certain things. And I don't feel it in the same way when I'm just reading. Like, I, for instance, subscribe to a news outlet called The Skim. Have we talked about this before?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you and I have, but not with our audience.
Right, right. So The Skim is a news outlet that is absolutely hysterically funny. It's kind of like Jon Stewart on paper. Like, it's funny and it's super, super, super accurate, but it distills everything down into very manageable little bite-sized nuggets that you get to consume, and it keeps things somewhat light, the things that can be kept light. But I find that I get what I need to get there, and I get it in a way that it is not toxic, and it is very accurate, and I move on with my day. And my nervous system really appreciates me for that.
Which is, you bring up an interesting topic of like getting where you get your news from. If you see something posted on social media and you are not completely sure the truthfulness behind that, do your research,
Absolutely.
because sometimes that information can be super hurtful, especially if it's not true. And you don't want people to be coming back to you and saying, "Hey, this wasn't really true." Be cognizant of like what you post. Yeah, just be a little bit more careful.
Yeah, well, I think it's everybody's responsibility to do our due diligence. We can't just assume that any one outlet or any one influencer is the end all be all, even if they appear to be the most well-regarded source of information. They are still only one source of information, regardless of how important or how credible they may seem to be. So I agree with you in every way that people need to do their due diligence and consider exactly what they're getting from these sources, and at the same time make sure that you're giving yourself more than one outlet. I like to try and listen to or watch or read news from all the outlets. So that's just me. I've never been more of a news junkie than I am now in these last several years. And obviously, that's, I think, been the case for a lot of people who never really paid attention to things like politics. They do now. And so I try to make sure that I get a representation that's accurate from everywhere. So, but at the end of the day, it's like you have to do what feels right. At the end of the day, we all get to audit our own feeds. Like, we have the responsibility to ourselves to audit our own feeds and influencers and identify, pick and choose what lifts us up and what brings us down. We have to be looking at those things equally, I think, and curate with intention, I think, is an important message to keep in mind.
Yep. This is such a great conversation and just so timely.
It was, and I'm not done. I have 2 more things I wanna say because they're on my
Okay.
brain, and I already think I forgot to say something earlier. I was gonna say 2 things, and I only said 1, so I feel like I need to make up for it. I think that in terms of social media and what we were talking about earlier, in terms of posting and being a little too free with our opinions and our comments and our feedback. I think that we need to post with intention. I think share a hopeful message. Maybe it's a resource, maybe it's a reflection, but try to put something out into the world that's not only accurate, but try to put something out into the world that's got some kind of hopefulness to it, especially in the world that we're living in now. And the only other thing is just set one new boundary for yourself in terms of social media, because there are boundaries to be set no matter how well we interact with social media. So pick a habit, like no phones before bed, which I need to do more of, or limit your screen time, or have an entirely social media free day or weekend. Do that, because social media can drain the life out of us. So the difference comes down to how we use it. And when we're intentional, we can transform our feeds into lifelines. So that was all I wanted to say. Thank you for letting me say it.
Beautiful. And like I said, beautiful conversation. Glad
Yeah,
we had it.
I am too. I'm really glad too. And I would love to come back and do it again with you next week. Can we do that?
We can.
Oh my God, this is great. I love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us on The Survivors. Remember, no matter how tough things feel, you are enough, and the world needs you just the way you are. You're not alone in this journey. There's a community here, and every step forward counts. We're so grateful you took the time to listen, and we hope you'll take one day at a time. Just know there's always more light ahead.
Thanks for being here, friends. Just remember, help is out there in so many different places. So if you or someone you know is struggling, please call 988 and a trained crisis counselor like me will be there to help. You can also find an inclusive and comprehensive directory of mental health resources, tools, and content at thehelphub.co. Just remember that help is always just a call or a click away. We'll catch you next week. In the meantime, keep surviving.